Welcome to The Reset, a weekly dispatch of experiences and takes on performance and modern care. For the athlete, the practitioner, and the thinker, we break down recovery, health, and performance systems to reshape the conversation around wellness. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Reset. Welcome to 2026. I just want to take some time before we get started to thank everyone for continuing to read and listen in on these blogs. I really appreciate the support. I started it in the spring of 2025 to bring all my listeners, my patients, friends, and colleagues a little bit more of an in-depth philosophical look on pain science and rehab and performance, the things that I do daily, the things that I think about daily when I work with everyone. But doesn't really get a lot of shined light. So it's been a creative outlet for myself, and I'm really happy to bring that to you. This year will be slightly different in the sense that we will be releasing half as many blogs. We'll move from once a week to once bi-weekly. That's just to give you more time in between to digest what I bring to you. It's going to be a little more science-based. It's going to be a little bit more fact-heavy, and it's going to give you some things to take away and continue to learn and reintegrate into your life. So, as always, I'm open for suggestions. Thanks for supporting me, and I hope you enjoy these because I'm enjoying bringing them to you, and I really want to continue doing this. So, without further ado, enjoy today's episode, and I'll see you next time. The Reset, Episode 31. The Nervous System, Part 1. A baseline understanding of the central and peripheral nervous systems and their many roles in regulating our health during physical activity. The Command Center. It only makes sense that we start this year with a sound foundation of what controls our health and wellness from within the body, the nervous system. Highly immersed, the nervous system has a hand in every process in the body. As you would imagine, it is a complex topic to cover, but understanding even a little of its purpose and point of view can transform how you view yourself and the outcomes of the many decisions that you make each day. An electrical grid of signals that connects the brain and the spinal cord, or the central nervous system, CNS for short, and the rest of the nerve pathway endings, or the peripheral nervous system, PNS for short. This grid of electrical signals is a highway of information that allows us to coordinate actions, process incoming information, modulate and mitigate pain and discomfort, and undergo autonomic functions such as breathing and digestion. This is a two-way highway of information and transfer that allows for free-flowing exchanges of communication. That is, if there isn't a dysfunctional component or inhibited pathway along the way. This week, we will unravel the nuances of each system and explain their position in our overall health and function of the human body. Dividing this month's blog posts into two categories: foundation and function, and optimization and dysfunction. This week's post will determine the understanding of the foundation and function of the nervous system. Foundation and function. We will begin with the central nervous system, the boss, the head of the mafia family that is your human body. Nothing happens without it knowing about it first. Consisting of the brain and the spinal cord, it sits and operates, centrally in the body. Within a fully functioning system, it takes in and processes information from the outside constantly. This information can be formed external to the body, like hot or cold temperature changes, or it could be internal to the body, like a sense of fullness or cramping after a large meal. In either scenario, the information is presented to the brain and/or spinal cord via the peripheral nerves of the body, interacting with those stimuli. That information is then processed and categorized as either safe or unsafe. Furthermore, the complexity of its organization and categorization is determined by its importance to your nervous system. The peripheral nervous system extends the central nervous system's reach, connecting the major organs and soft tissue to the central system itself. This is the extended arms of the mafia family. This system is responsible for listening to the word on the street, taking in information, and relaying it up the chain of command, until further instructions on what to do next are communicated back. It consists of nerve endings and pathways embedded within the body part, interacting with the world, or helping it do so. This includes, but is not limited to, muscles, bones, tendons, organs, skin, and blood and lymph vessels. It's not the peripheral nervous system's job to make decisions. Its only job is to take information in from both ends of the highway. The peripheral nervous system is split into two major components. The autonomic system, or ANS for short. The autonomic system covers all involuntary actions within the body. They're automatic. These include digestion and heartbeat. Then we have the somatic system, or SNS for short. This system controls voluntary actions like walking, running, jumping, etc., requiring anything with some thought and skill and coordination to be carried out. It can be much more complex than the autonomic system, sometimes due to its varying levels of capacity, skill acquisition, and repetition-based success. The process. For simplicity's sake, we will assign 4 major components to the integration of new information into the system. We will categorize this process into sensation, processing, followed by action, and then followed by regulation. Sensation. Information ingestion through sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound stimuli. An interaction with the world around us creates an open communication channel with our brains. Specialized nerve endings in each part of our body can detect changes and relay specially processed messages through neurochemical signaling, just a bunch of science, into the brain for processing. Basically, it takes information in and communicates it up the chain. Processing. The brain recovers information sent by the peripheral system and its components and interprets the information to the point where it decides what to categorize it as, safe or unsafe, and then determines a course of action based on that categorization. Action. The communication reaches the appropriate body segments in order to react accordingly to the overall decision from the brain. This is all in response to that original stimuli. Finally, regulation. Regulation in response to the actions carried out by the body via orders from the brain in order to maintain a balanced internal environment. This is the body's reaction to the reaction and is essential in maintaining homeostasis from within the body. More of a normalized state, something of a resting state that you would experience probably as you're reading this right now. Real life scenario. Let's go through an example. You're taking a vacation somewhere in a mountainous region. You're on a lovely morning walk. You're enjoying the unbeaten path, taking in the sounds of the forest, birds chirping, wind blowing through the leaves. When you hear some loud rustling in the bushes, off to the right and behind you some distance. You attribute it to the many variances of the wildlife inhabiting the land you're visiting. You trek on, pushing forward and breathing in the fresh air. Some distance further down the path, you hear a new noise. A rumbling growl fills your ears from the right and an even smaller distance behind you. Now, your brain has a previous judgment of a sound, the sensation, being the rustling in the leaves, and the distance in this environment between you and that sound. And it links the two sounds that you heard, the rustling and now the growling. It processes the collection of inputs and uses the information and new stimuli to form its next action. The processing phase is never really complete. It can be adaptive to the situation and it always takes in new information as it presents itself. But at this point, it's determined that there is immediate danger present and must warn other bodily systems to handle the situation. It perceives a larger animal based on sound and distance between you and the animal itself, and understands that the chances of fighting it off might be slim, though it must try to prepare itself to do so. The action phase is the movement required to carry out the plan from the brain, according to the processing that had just occurred. You choose to run. Maybe not a great idea, I don't know. I've never ran from a growling beast in the forest before. Regardless, heat increases within the body to warm the tissue in preparation for physical movement. Blood flow increases through increased heart rate in order to supply that tissue with nutrients, and hormones are released to potentially block pain and increase mental focus. This is a typical fight or flight response, and it happens to all of us more regularly than you think, whether it's the scenario of being stuck in the forest with an aggressive apex predator, or finally working up the courage to confronting your boss about your lack of pay raise each year, despite the work you do. The same processes are involved. The only thing that changes is the intensity at which they're carried out. Anyways, back to our story. You managed to get away. While that was happening, the body is trying to regulate with the combination of certain chemicals and hormones released in the body, stimulation of sweat glands to activate in overdrive to make sure you don't overheat, and a hyperacute localized and systemic blood flow to help healing of the tissues that just worked harder than they ever had. This is all to regulate your body back to a somewhat homeostatic state. Most inputs from the external world require a decision-making process to be carried out by the brain. Most. Exemptions. There are exemptions where the spinal cord, which can be given the role of the mafia boss's right hand, make a decision that it knows the brain will approve of no matter what. This is known as a reflex. The process of the withdrawal reflex is what we'll cover. The process involves a specific neural pathway known as a reflex arc, which primarily involves the spinal cord and bypasses conscious brain processing just for speed purposes. We'll break it down. Number one, the stimulus detection occurs. It's happening in the receptors of the body, similar to what we explained earlier. These specialized sensory receptors are in the skin, called nociceptors. They detect an external stimulus, like extreme heat or pain. Number two, sensory input via the sensory neuron. The receptors convert the stimulus into electrical signals, called nerve impulses, through a process called sensory transduction. These impulses travel along the sensory neuron from the point of inception to the central nervous system, or the CNS, which we've already covered. Specifically, entering the spinal cord. Number three, integration. Inside the spinal cord, the sensory neuron creates a communication channel with an interneuron, or a relay neuron. This happens in what's called the gray matter of the spinal cord. This interneuron processes the signal and makes a rapid choice to initiate a protective response. At the same time, collateral signals are sent up the spinal cord to the brain, allowing you to consciously feel the pain later or process it later. So while it's happening, the decision-making process is happening within the spinal cord as a protective measure. The system has determined that if it takes the normal route to the brain, back through the spinal cord, into the periphery, it will be too late. This is why a decision happens in the spinal cord, only to send message up to the brain at the same time for later processing. Number four, the motor output. The interneuron then synapses or communicates with a motor neuron, which carries out the electrical impulses away from the spinal cord to the appropriate effector organ or a muscle. So basically, this is that action phase that we talked about that's similar to the brain decision-making process of previous stimuli. Okay? So the same process occurs just within the spinal cord because action still needs to take place without the brain's go-ahead. And number 5, the response. This involves the effectors. A motor neuron reaches the muscle and releases that chemical reaction to cause the muscle fibers to contract and move. This contraction is the response that causes you to, let's say, immediately pull your hand away from a heat source. So if you put your hand on a hot stove you didn't know was hot, that snap in the spinal cord tells your body to move away immediately before the brain really realizes. That's why, if you haven't noticed, if you've done that, you typically move your hand away way before you feel the pain. That's involving that reflex arc and the message being sent while you're making the decision. So this rapid involuntary action prevents further tissue damage, right? It's purely protective. It knows there's danger, it knows you need to do something, it knows what you need to do, which is usually a simple reaction, like pulling your arm away, and it does it. The pain sensation and the memory of the event are then processed by the brain concurrently with or immediately after the reflex action occurs. So this helps you avoid similar situations in the future. If it was to happen again, you would remember, boom. Closing. Okay, it's been a heavy science-based blog, I understand that. Though we covered 2 scenarios in which the nervous system has to react to a set of given information that's external to your body, there are more detailed and complex components to them. Naturally, we can assume this. We have systems within our body to counteract situations we face daily. Some get utilized more often than others, and some get barely used at all. This is due to our habits and our preferences of actions, both highly attributed, in my opinion, to character traits, morals, and foundational views that we develop as we gain experience in life. These psychosocial factors that influence our behavior are very important. It's why we've covered it to the extent that we have in the past, and we will continue to. They're essential to learn about yourself when you're trying to understand your body and its function or dysfunction. Not one decision we make is purely physiological, as we've covered in today's blog. More so, we can say that the physiological elements to our health are influenced by who we are and how we approach life. This is why this blog has and will continue to cover the less understood and more commonly dismissed personal and philosophical pieces to health. Next week's blog, we will dive further into fight and flight responses, pathologies that do not typically present symptoms right away, and relearning safety after injury. You will all be given a PDF cheat sheet on the nervous system, its form and function, to help supplement our learnings. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In health and performance, Alex.